Before we come on to Jeroo and Dhruvin's stories, in terms of your startups, what other funding paths have you experienced, Sutin?
So for myself, the ones I've experienced is mainly kind of bootstrapping and self-funding. Because I had actually done a career in finance, I actually thought, well, let's see if I can go the other way. Instead of raising VC funding, can I make customer funding work? Can I make the product itself work like a traditional business to generate enough revenues to cover it? So that was kind of the goal I had in mind when I started, which is why I went that way. Afterwards, I had experience kind of running an accelerator program, so having experience from that, sitting on the other side of the table. And I've also had experience kind of giving impact investments, so doing a bit of impact investing, again, on the investor side. And
I'd love to talk to more of you about that impact investing a bit later on, because I know for a lot of this community it's really interesting. But yeah, so impact, bootstrap, self-funding, crowd, obviously.
Yes, that was the last one we covered, crowdfunding.
Yes, there's a lot. Any others?
A bit with the grant funding as well, because Social Tech Trust, we gave grants as well. So I can speak on that from the grant funder side, like what we used to look for.
Fantastic. So loads of expertise. No wonder Virgin StartUp snapped you up, Sutin. So let's I was just going to say, when I was looking at this topic and reflecting back on a lot of the startups I've worked with over the last decade or so, there is a set of questions that I found personally really helpful. And I'd love to hear from the three of you whether there's any other questions that you ask yourself before you start fundraising. So for those that are watching, listening in, maybe make a note of these, because the questions, getting clarity around the right path, or even if you should finance or go fundraising at all, is obviously the most important thing, rather than just assuming you need to go off and do it. And do the one that you sort of sounds most attractive. So the first question I always ask is, can I build this business without fundraising? Like Sutin just gave the example of with her first startup. Can I do this through selling a product or selling anything to help fund this in a way, or fund it through my other job, or that kind of way? So there's that way of doing it. Or is it going to be a distraction if I start fundraising away from doing what I've started out with my business? If you then answer that question of like, no, I do really need funding, the next question is how much? Because if you're not clear on that, then you're not going to persuade anyone, and also you're going to mess up your business down the line. So it's crunching the numbers. The Virgin Startup Loan business plan is a great way to do it, because it makes you look at your own personal finances and your business projections, which are obviously all made up at the start. So you've really got to try and get them as close to reality as possible to work out how much you need. And then the final question is, which funding path will be the least painful? This is where Sutin says there is no pain-free funding path. And most impactful for your particular mission. And remember, you're all on different missions. You're all in this for different reasons. You're all like, some of you are pure lifestyle. Some of you are like scale up, want to build the next unicorn that's going to change the world. And that's all cool, whichever path you're on. But the different funding paths complement those in different ways. So get clarity on that. Just quickly, once around the room here, are there any other questions that you would be asking yourself in advance of getting on with the fundraising? Sutin.
I would definitely ask yourself, are you willing to exit the company if you're going to go the equity route? Because all of your equity investors are going to be looking for an exit. Okay.
Great question. Jeroo.
What kind of investors do you want? Are you looking for investors? Are you looking for partners? Are you looking for collaborators? That's all slightly different.
Fantastic, because they're essentially joining your team, if not working every day. Dhruvin, throwing this question up front, what would you ask yourself before fundraising?
Yeah, depending on which channel you want to go after to fundraise, is do you fit the bill? If you don't fit the bill, then there's no point looking for a venture fund to get investment in, because you would just waste your time and their time. So do you fit the requirements of that fundraising channel?
Yeah. Are you what they're looking for, basically, rather than assume? I mean, it's that difference between, it's interesting. We've got a question here, which I can throw in now, which is, there's a lot of assumptions, especially when we watch programs like Dragon's Den, which we'll come on to as an interesting funding path, that all entrepreneurs are super confident. And there's just like, it's all about showing off and like, pumping out your chest and go, yeah, it's going to be great, it's going to make millions. But the reality is most first time and early entrepreneurs are scared, they have imposter syndrome and so on. So how do you figure out who those, you know, do you just go out and do a lot of research? What did you do, Dhruvin?
So yeah, I guess to briefly talk about my funding cycle, it's been a little bit of, yeah. So initially it started from grant funding from a university, which then allowed me to create a product, and then I bootstrapped to 100K in revenue. You know, selling pre-orders of products via a Wix website. And then I found an angel investor who really liked me, liked the business. Didn't even think about funding, but somehow this angel investor wanted to join. And then we grew the business to 2 million revenue. And then it was like, you know, we went on Dragon's Den, and they, you know, we secured investment there, but we had to turn them down. And then it was like, right, what do we do now? And then we thought, well, actually, let's raise from private investors. And then we raised, I guess, a seed round of £1 million from angels and then one VC. So that's kind of, yeah, broadly different avenues that we used at different times.
It just shows you, and that's the fast track version or the tweet side version of your journey. We're going to dig into the detail of that, but it just shows you in that great little summary how many different paths there are, and at different times they can be valuable. So thank you for sharing that. Jeroo, let's dive into your story, and then we'll come back around the room. Take us back to the beginning of Pip and Henry, and how you what the idea was and how you funded the first version.
Sure. So, you know, about 2-3 years ago, I was working in customer strategy and analytics for the likes of Sainsbury's and Barclays. I was very entrenched in the corporate world, but very, very keen to pursue something on my own and trying different things on the side and trying to figure out where my passions really lay and you know, what I wanted to do. And I came across, you know, the innovation in the materials space, which really excited me, in the sort of sustainable eco-bio-based material space. And in parallel, I also had my daughter, and so I was getting very familiar with products for kids, and I saw a real gap in sustainable footwear for children. And so that's what led to the birth and the seed of the idea for Pip and Henry, where we make
just on the problem side, because this is always the key to it all, Jeroo. So sustainable footwear for kids, why doesn't exist? Why isn't this problem being solved already? And why did you decide, I'm going to go for this at that point? Because I'm sure it's like one of those things, there's a good reason why people haven't tried to solve it.
So, you know, I through my research, I learned some really shocking facts then. So British families buy 80 million pairs of shoes for their children every single year in the UK alone. That's a staggering number of shoes bought for kids. And when they're young, they outgrow them every 3 to 4 months in the early years of their lives. And unfortunately, 85 to 90% of them end up in landfill, where they then leach really horrible toxins and chemicals into the ground and water systems over hundreds and thousands of years. So there's a real sustainability issue and crisis in the footwear space. And brands like Allbirds and Vija are trying to address them, predominantly for adults, but there isn't much innovation being done in the children's footwear space. And I saw a real gap then. That's why I sort of jumped on it. And so, yeah, that's really the problem area, and that's what got me excited about building Pip and Henry. But we're looking at sustainability beyond just what the shoes we make. So, of course, our shoes are made out of environmentally friendly material, but they're developing a recycling program. We have an educational content side to the business where we really want to get kids thinking about the environment and starting to nudge them into feeling more empowered about the change they can bring about. And we're also investing from an R&D perspective into the fundamental design of footwear. How can we make shoes in themselves easier to recycle, easier to repurpose, you know, last for a much longer time than 3 to 4 months that they're typically worn by children, etc. So we're investing in that as well.
Are you naive, brave, a genius, a mix of it all? Because I remember looking at this exact same problem. I don't know how many new parents do, but it's like the high street customer service is terrible. There seems to be a duopoly in the market for kids' shoes, and the sustainability is just totally missing in action. And yet you've got this data, as you've shared, around like 80 million shoes a year being, you know, it's crazy in numbers, like the negative impacts. But when you dive into it, as I did, and sort of validated it very quickly with other parents, like there's a need here. It just looked like a huge upward struggle. So did you, in terms of getting off the ground? So how did you get it off the ground, and when did the funding come in?
a little bit of all of that, Ben, a little bit of luck, a little bit of perseverance, a little bit of just blind faith, and a little bit of ignorance, really. I didn't know how complex footwear as a product actually is, how many components a shoe actually has. And so, I had to go through an educational phase myself around the making of shoes and the components in them. But in terms of the fundraising journey, I suppose I bootstrapped my way for the first 2 years, really. And I was lucky, I talked about what kind of investor do you want? Do you want an investor? Do you want a collaborator or a partner? And I was lucky that I found a partner in the manufacturing organization that I worked with for the first 2 years, where they pretty much pro bono tested and trialed different materials, different footwear concepts with me iteratively in small quantities. They still are our leading manufacturing partner. And they, whilst they are a massive unit and they supply shoes to the likes of Clark's, where they need a minimum order of 10,000 pairs per style, per color, they are very happy to supply for me.
Well, that's a great hustle / charm, but they're now on in part of your supply chain, so it's worked out for them. And then where did the funding come in?
So the first external funding I took was from Virgin, and it was a small loan of £15,000, and I really just took that in so I could get started on certain aspects of building the business that I didn't want to take on myself. So things like getting my trademarks set up, buying materials for the first initial collection that we wanted to soft launch in the market and test, doing a little bit of market research and customer research. So that loan really kind of helped us get that off the ground and helped us get ready for the next stage, which was equity fundraising. I was lucky in that we got a grant before that.
Okay, but on the Virgin Startup loan itself, you say a small loan, but it's still at that stage. It had a significant part to play. What was the expectation? And be completely candid with us here of what that loan process was going to be like versus the reality.
It is a lot more stringent than you would think at the outset. There's a lot of, you have to actually figure out your forecast. You have to really dig deep into what your strategies are for the next couple of months, what that money will be plugged into, what outcomes you expect to see from that, what milestones are you setting up for your business. So it's a really robust business plan that you're submitting for the loan application, but it really helps, structure your strategy. Often when you're a solo founder and you're so deep in the weeds, you don't take the time to take a step back and think of your milestones for the next year versus the next 5 years. And so I actually found the process, whilst it was long, I actually found it useful in the long run.
And did the business plan that you wrote for the loan play out?
Yes and no. I guess as a young business, you have the luxury of pivoting and you have the luxury of trialing different things. So there are certain things that we thought we would trial that we didn't, and there were certain things we didn't think we'd start on, and actually 8 months down the line, we're on that road significantly. So yes and no.
Okay, and on the impact investing, I just wanted to bring in Sutin at this point because you've had a lot of experience here. Is it, first of all, what is impact investing, and how does it? Is it harder? How is it different from normal equity investing in the business?
So impact investing is usually the investor is looking for some kind of social impact, and a lot of times people talk about kind of the UN SDGs, and they might align to one of those SDGs, or it could be targeting different areas that need more support, like underrepresented founders or female founders. So there's different types. And it usually often comes from kind of social impact organizations or foundations and trusts or charities who focus on these areas as well. And there's also quite a lot of different impact funds that have popped up over the last 5 years, and it's quite a quickly growing sector, actually. So the difference from impact investing versus traditional investing is they often want to see kind of your impact measurements. So you also need to kind of measure not only your business metrics, but they want to see what is the positive impact you're making, what's the difference you're making for your customer, for your beneficiaries, for the planet. So whatever that change is that you're trying to make, you have to make an effort to measure it.
Yes, absolutely. And does that reflect, Jeroo, what you experienced when you got around to talking to investors?
Yes, I mean, I suppose our investment hasn't come from a traditional impact fund yet. So we're still in the sort of angel, friends and family kind of space with our equity round. But yes, absolutely, because we are a mission-driven business ourselves, whether or not the investor demands tracking of those metrics, we will do that anyway. So if the time is right and we apply to an impact fund, we'll have the metrics we need.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned something there, friends and family there, and I feel like we should address this question up front, because it is a way of funding, especially early on, many startups and businesses through taking either a loan or an investment, however it's structured, from friends and family. I wonder if anyone here has had that experience and reflections on it.
I haven't taken a direct loan, but I did quit my job 2 years ago. So in some ways, my family has invested in the business because I stopped taking a salary.
Yeah, indirectly. There's always a way that the family is involved, that's for sure. I see Dhruvin's nodding. Sutin, have you come across ways that, or people that have had investment that way?
Friends and family around it, I guess the definition is also a little bit broader sometimes. It's not always just direct friends and family. It's also kind of smaller investors, acquaintances, people you maybe meet on LinkedIn. Yeah. So the definition kind of broadens out a bit. We have seen a lot, and we also see a lot of where founders don't feel comfortable actually trying to raise friends and family money. They feel like they're going around with a bit of a begging bowl. But we also kind of talk to them about kind of flipping that on its head. So, for example, if you are successful, you know, your family or your friends are probably going to be like, "You raised money from other people. Why didn't you come to me?" So, you know, if you are successful, they will take part in your success as well, and you'll be lifting all boats.
Yes, exactly. And that's why a nice thing about crowdfunding, I guess, because it's an opportunity for anyone to get involved. So if your friends and family want to, it's there. My just quick reflection on this point, and Jeroo, come back to your story and then onto yours, Dhruvin, is the friends and family looks risk-free on the surface. If you've got, you know, an uncle or whoever it is, you're lucky enough who wants to come in and sort of say, "Hey, I'd love to back your idea. You're the entrepreneur of the family. This is brilliant. I can see the opportunity." But there's two things to consider from what I've seen, both personally and also working with others who've done it, is that the no strings attached sort of approach of friends and family is that there are always strings attached. They may just not be obvious. They may not be a legal contract, an equity investment, a crowdfunding agreement, etc., a loan agreement with someone like Virgin StartUp through Virgin StartUp. So, you know, what happens if it doesn't work? What does that do to your relationship with that person and family? Are you being really clear with them that there's a good chance, although you don't feel it and you're not putting that out there, that this might not work out as a business and their money will not, you know, the chance of getting a return and exit, as you said, Sutin, earlier on, is you know, is potentially really low. And it's that contradiction between your confidence and your willingness to like build something successful and, you know, taking other people's money who you care about. So if you are in my reflection would be, if you're in an emotional relationship with people you're taking money from, so that inner circle, maybe not as wide as what you just suggested, Sutin, then you need to be really careful. And crowdfunding is a great way to channel them, basically. That's just a personal reflection. Dhruvin, you want to throw something in the ring?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, this founder journey is it's lonely at times. So you've got business friends, but then you also need your friends and family to talk about stuff that's not business related. So if you do go quite deep and you raise from all your friends and family, you're not going to have anything else to speak about, because it might get awkward if you're doing really bad, or if it's doing really well, that's all they'll talk about, right? So you also need some breathing space. So yeah, it's a really tough one to decide.
And to throw a tough question onto a top of a tough question, Sean would like to know is, what do you offer friends and family for percentage, for equity, which I guess comes on to we'll tackle these questions as they come up and we'll go back to the stories, but like valuating your business early on. Who wants to tackle that one? What do you offer friends and family or early investors in terms of equity slice?
Oof. Valuation is always a difficult question at every round. valuation for any company is just really what anybody's willing to pay for it. So you kind of need to go into the market, kind of get that comparables that you can see in the market, as well as have lots of conversations. I mean, we've had founders who they're actually having difficult conversations with family because it's harder for them to negotiate with their rich uncle. So then they go out and find other investors who are more experienced in the market, other angels, and then bring that valuation back to kind of leverage that. I mean, in general, if you do some research online, you'll kind of see people saying that each round you probably give away between kind of 15 to 25% per round. And then you need to look at the end of that process that you still have enough for yourself. Because investors will want to make sure you still have enough skin in the game that you want to continue running the company and not just give up and run away. So you can also work it backwards that way to see how much you think you're going to grow and raise and how many rounds you think you're going to raise to come back to where you are now.
Yeah, great answer. Other reflections, valuations. Dhruvin, you've been through it in dramatic ways. Perhaps you should tell us a little bit about this as this questions come up, like the Dragon's Den journey and the hyper sort of like negotiations that go on in that room.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just to give in terms of Dragon's Den, where were we at that point? We just did 670k in revenue. We went into the den asking for £75,000 for 15% business. So, you know, valuing the business at $500,000 if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's pretty good for that turnover. Yeah,
I mean, yes and no. I would say it was probably we were short. We were kind of cutting ourselves short, actually.
Well, that's what I mean. It was a good deal for the Dragons.
Yeah. But you know, when you're speaking to the BBC, they're like, well, you know, you should. The sweet spot is giving away, you know, asking for 75k, 75 to 100k for, you know, something of higher than 10%. And you're like, well, actually, our goal is to get these investors on board and make it, you know, a win-win situation. So you kind of take that advice, right? Because you're thinking, right, these are these almighty business titans, and they are, right? They are. But, you know, what we learned from the process afterwards, where we spoke to them, and you know, they're busy people. They're not going to run your business for you. They're not going to open all those doors you think they can. You know, people can open doors. It's not about opening, actually. It's about closing those doors and actually securing the deal. And Dragons, no one can close a deal. Only you and the business can. So which ultimately led us to say no to the Dragons anyway.
So tell us about what happened on the show for the 5 people watching tonight who missed it.
So we went on. We got 3 no's from Deborah, Tuka, and Sarah, and then I was like, right, I might as well go home now. It's not looking good. And then Tej threw his hat into the field, and so did Peter. And then they fought, and then we kind of negotiated them to invest in the business together on screen. So we kind of came away with that win. And then we spent 6 months negotiating a shareholders agreement. The business grew, so we said, guys, we need a better deal.
6 months.
Yeah, 6 months.
Talk about like pain-free fundraising. That doesn't sound, regardless of the PR, that doesn't sound great.
It's horrible. I mean, 3 months were because Peter didn't have a legal team, or they were busy, so we told. And then another 3 months.
That's the scoop. Peter Jones doesn't have a legal team.
No, don't. You didn't hear that from me. And then the second 3 months was negotiating clauses where, you know, they just wanted too much control. And as a founder, you want investors to support you, not say, right, because we're public figures, if we think things aren't going well, we can come in and get rid of you, your management team, and everything else, right? You want investors that are going to support you in the growth. And when you see clauses like that, it's a red flag. So we tried to negotiate, and then the business grew 5 times, and we kind of were like, well, we need to renegotiate, and they didn't want to renegotiate outside of the den, so we had to ultimately, you know, walk away.
Strong. The best use of Dragon's Den possible. And we're actually going to need to talk about your business in a second. Jeroo, first of all, let's go back to where we got to with your story. So you took the Virgin StartUp loan, and then how long did it take before you needed to raise money again?
Well, it's been 8 months since we took that loan. So I think we got access to that money in January.
Okay.
In November the previous year, though, we had applied for a competition as a startup founder, you see tons of competitions coming your way and you apply to everyone. And if you don't, you should. And one of them happened to be the Circular Futures Fund competition, which was being run by John Lewis, where they had a pot of £1 million on offer to any companies that were trying to invest in truly circular solutions in any sector, fashion, food, health, whatever. It was a long process. We went through several rounds, a lot of opening our books and our paperwork, a lot of due diligence, a lot of various questions and answers and rounds we had to go through, including a final panel where we presented our idea to a bunch of people at John Lewis's headquarters, and we won a part of that pot. So we won $250,000,
wow,
which was amazing, really, really amazing. Totally worth it. But I filled that form in November. It was just one of the million things I did on that day, and I just thought, yet another competition.
Yeah, but you got to, as Lissa says here on the chat, you got to be in it to win it. Well, yeah. Tell us first of all quickly, like, how do you track these kind of competitions? Because you're absolutely right. You've got to throw your hat in the ring with these things just to see. Do you like have a search thing delivering your results?
No, it's just using your networks, your contacts, looking at LinkedIn, following groups of people that are in this space. I obviously follow a lot of fashion influencers and things like that, a lot of fashion businesses, a lot of competitors, things like that. So you get to know what's happening in your space pretty quickly.
And when you're going through that deep, essentially due diligence, it's what a good investor would do with the competition. Are you weighing up at any point, like, this is too much, it's distracting us from like our core business? Or are you thinking, this is great because I'm just having to like get better at what we do in the process?
A bit of both. You've got to see how much you're likely to get out of the process at the end of the day. If it was a £5,000 award, I might have been a little bit more fed up with the process. I knew, this was £1 million pot. I knew it wasn't going to be a small win if we were going to win it. And so, yes, it was worth the effort.
Yeah, absolutely. What is the money in the bank, and what are you going to be doing with it?
Yeah, the money is in the bank. Unlike any other grant where they usually pay you in arrears, they wait for you to undertake the project. They ask for you to pay 30% of the project costs up front. So that's typically how an Innovate UK, for example, would offer a grant. John Lewis were very generous. So they've paid up 70% of the amount that they have bookmarked for us upfront before the project even started. And that money came in last month. So it's very early days for us. But essentially, we have a bunch of milestones. We have a bunch of quarterly meetings and things to keep track of progress and, see if there are ways in which they can step in to help us. And things
but
like
no
that.
Debt, no equity.
No debt, no equity.
Oh, this is like, everyone's like, what? This exists, but it does. Jeroo's just proved it. Sutin, on the grant question, you mentioned up front you've been involved with a couple. What would be your general advice on those thinking about trying to find grants or competitions?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of websites out there that list grants. There's quite a few that are free as well. And then for impact investing, a good one is goodfinance.org as well, which was sponsored by Big Society Capital, put together out there. So from there, you can also find other grant funding sites. I think the most important thing with grants is really making sure you read the criteria carefully, that you must kind of fit the criteria. There's no point applying if you do not, because you'll just get tossed out and you waste your effort. And as Jeroo says, also look at the size. Like, is it worth the amount of work you're going to have to do? If it's £5,000 versus $250,000, which of course grant funding and competitions are the best type of capital because it's free. There's no equity that you're giving away.
Absolutely. And Jeroo was another incentive because John Lewis can help you at their future sales channel for you.
Well, there's no ties either way. They're not obligated.
Okay.
To sell our shoes, but equally we're not obligated to sell with them. So, so it's a completely no ties, no conditions based contract that we've signed.
Brilliant. Well, there we go. You've won the funding party, I think, tonight. I just wanted to mention that There's lots of resources being shared in the chat, which is fantastic. The Virgin Startup team have mentioned a couple of times. They've got, this will be emailed you to tomorrow, so don't worry if you've missed it. But it's a Founder's Guide to Funding and Investment written by the experts, which is this team, who've seen it all over the last 7 years. So please have a look at that. If you don't see it on the chat, you'll get it in your inbox tomorrow. Dhruvin, let's go back to the start, because I think there's people here who are still like, he's been on Dragon's Den, he's done this, but what is his thing? So tell us about Ocushield and how you started it.
So Ocushield is a company that looks after all our eyes. What we do is we create products that filter harmful blue light from screens. And by doing that, what happens is you have pressure feeling eyes, and then you can improve your sleep as well after screen time. So we have technology in screen filters, glasses, lighting products, and we're now, since our latest round of investment, we're now expanding into eye care. So doing things like a sleep eye mask, eye supplements, etc. You know, widening to cater for our customers.
So you are in the business of eye well-being. Tell us a little bit more about the problem. Why is sitting here for most of us now staring at the screen ultimately not good for our eyes?
Yeah, so I studied to become an optometrist at university, so I was deep in studying the eyes already, and I did a research study on how blue light or artificial light affects the eye's physiology and circadian rhythms, and I found that, you know, after a few hours on screens, the short wavelength blue light causes visual stress, which leads to eye strain and headaches. And then also, if you're using screens when the sun sets, so in the evening, it suppresses melatonin, which makes it harder for you to fall asleep. Two massive pain points, and this was back in 2014 when I did the research, and I thought, wow, you know, screens are only going to get bigger and brighter. And selfishly, I said I needed products like this to solve for myself, because I was like, wow, look at the amount of screens I'm using. And I did no market research. I just said, if I need it, someone else is going to need it. I'm sure there's someone else like me. And that's where the journey began, to try and create something that could, you know, serve our eyes and let our eyes thrive.
And it's one of those things when you hear about it, you're like, that's so obvious, and no wonder you got a lot of attention on Dragon's Den and beyond. What's been the hardest part of the journey so far? Has it been the fundraising? Has it been the product development, or something else?
Yeah, I think the hardest challenge for me personally has been, I mean, the pandemic was tough in itself, because it came with a lot of challenges. I mean, growing pain challenges, so privileged in that way, but I think it's been mainly around product, because we've got so many SKUs. We've got 90 SKUs, so 90 variations, or 90 products and 6 or 7 product sets. And when you're creating so many products and you're using multiple suppliers, mitigating any risk, you know, the products don't come looking like something else. It cannot turn up at all because it's lost on a plane, a boat. You know, there's so many things you put faith into other partners to do that, you know, there's so many risks that can happen. And yeah, for us, it's, you know, we've learned the hard way in terms of supply chain, what to do to mitigate those kinds of risks, because yeah, you're putting a lot of working capital to get products across. So yeah, for us, it's been that, and we just have to learn as we've got on. If I'd say to anyone in the physical product business, I'd say, if you can have a mentor that's 9 to 24 months ahead of you in the game, they can actually give you some real credible advice on, right, you need to have these QC processes in place. You need to use these freight forwarders to, you know, see where the best prices are, etc. And that really helps. Whereas when you're learning by yourself, you only know what you know.
Absolutely. So industry-based mentors. Now, I've got here lots of questions from Virgin Startup community members who are, thanks for firing them all in, everyone. What I thought I would do is just rattle through some of them, because they jump all over the place, but they're all things that I think a lot of people will be thinking about. And then for us as a group, just to respond really quickly, either through personal experience or something we've seen and observed. So are you ready? Fingers on buzzers. Susan looks like she's having a fourth coffee of the day. It's after, you know, it's after 2 p.m. Okay. Bootstrapping versus funding. If you were doing it again, which would you try and do? Sutin.
It's a funny question, because it's almost like you want to try the one you didn't do before. So for me, because I did the bootstrapping before, this time I would actually try and go out and raise funding.
Okay. Nice. And Jeroo.
I would have started fundraising earlier.
Okay, but that's because of the problem you're trying to solve in the market, and yeah, absolutely. So now you know more about it. It's interesting in that's a physical product like what both of you are building. It requires a lot of resource. Dhruvin, is it for you?
Yeah, same as Sutin. Was I bootstrapped? I'd probably fundraise to begin with. But what I would say is you learn so much more when you bootstrap. As in, with so many roles, you learn so much more. So yeah, generally we always think like the faster you go, the better. But actually, sometimes, yeah, if it's your first venture, learning more is better. And then second time round, you can do what you want, and you're not gonna get taken for, for some, I'm sure everyone's been there when an agency wants to charge you an arm and a leg to do something where you're like, hold on, I've done this before, it shouldn't cost this much.
And that brings us nicely on to the next question, which is when is the right time to quit your job and go all in and try and raise money?
When you can do it.
I quit my job 3 months before COVID hit.
You didn't have a crystal ball
for those first few months where I was like, oh shit, the factory is shut, everything is shut.
I could have had a year and a half of furlough though.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't know, right? You don't know when it could. What was the thing that prompted you to jump though? What was pushing you?
To be fair, I had done this on the side as a side hustle for a year before I quit. I kind of moved from a 5-day week at Barclays to a 4-day week to then a no-day week. So
yeah, so you negotiated your employer knew that this is the way you were going.
Yeah.
Okay, and they supported you on that. There's a lot of questions, obviously, on that process for people. I used to run courses for people who are quitting jobs to start businesses, and this question was the main one. And I said, if it's possible, to have an open conversation with your employer about, look, I have this thing in me, I have to get out in the world, and I'm on this path. Can you help me navigate it? Often that works out for the better, but appreciate it doesn't work for every person and situation. Sutin, when should people quit?
Really, it's about doing kind of what you mentioned before, that calculation on your cost of living expenses and what you can afford, and then how much money have you saved up. So when you go out fundraising normally, you should go out and raise kind of 12 to 18 months and really target 18 months. So the same thing applies for your job. If you're going to quit your job, make sure you've got enough living costs to cover 12 months as well as whatever your business needs are. So you've got to kind of do a little bit of math there and do a little bit of looking at your bank account statements and seeing how much you normally spend to calculate that.
Yes. Great. Thank you. Dhruvin, on timing.
Yeah, so I think bootstrapping is the best way to allow you to then realize when's the best time to quit, I think. Because you don't want the stresses of thinking when, if you're going to be able to pay rent or food. That's a whole different, like Maslow's hierarchy, it's a whole different problem in itself. You want to be able to not have those stresses itself. So, yeah, it has to be, as Sutin said, cost of living, how much can you survive on what you're on. I was working as an optometrist. I mean, I'm quite fortunate where I could contract and work a couple days a week, and I slowly, I was working right until the pandemic. Actually, I mean, I was just doing 2 days a month right up until the pandemic, but I still had my hand in like an employed role. So yeah, I think it's finding out when the right time is, but doing it as you grow the business because there's less stress on you.
Yeah, especially if you have more responsibilities and commitments outside of work, whether that's family, cost of living, of course, but other responsibilities, then it needs to be done manage the risk. Okay, more questions here. Investment landscape. I really need an explanation for all the different investment rounds and the amount of investment one can raise at each level. Does this exist? Sutin, as we know, there are no rules here. But on the labeling of investment rounds, how do you think about it? Because depending which country you're in or region, and different like tech sectors or non-tech sectors, the language can change, right?
Kind of, but I guess in general, people talk about kind of pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, C, and then D. And then in recent years, they even got Series kind of A+, or people doing a second seed or second pre-seed. So it's just a labeling convention, really. It's kind of optics, and it's kind of the stage you're at and how much you're raising.
Yeah.
You can find a few, if you Google, you can find a few of these kind of guides about roughly how much they are at each round. But that, again, varies by sector. So if you're tech versus consumer, those are very different in how much you're going to raise at each round. So you need to specify what sector you're looking at. And also, if you're European, UK versus the US, again, different market. So you need to just be very kind of specific a bit in your search and research.
Yeah, and with those labels that you rattle through very expertly just then, Sutin, they're easy to forget. I mean, I've been working funding for a while, and I was like, what comes after that one? The way I often think about it is like, okay, funding round 1, 2, 3, and they just get called seed, pre-seed, seed, etc. So, it's just the next level. And then what are you doing now? And as we've heard tonight, there's a variety of ways you mix it up. It's whatever's best for you and your business. Any other thoughts on, the question keeps coming back in here on valuations. So if we were, Jeroo and Dhruvin, how did you go about, you mentioned Dragon's Den, but how have you valued your business? How did you initially value it, and how have you done it since then? Have you used a strategy, or have you just tried to negotiate with the investors? Jeroo.
So I'm actually in the process of raising an equity round at the moment, and we are close to closing. And I battled with that same question because it's the first time I was offering equity. So how much equity do I offer? So I did several things. I looked at what we'd already built in the business that had value. And then I looked at what other businesses in our sector at our stage were kind of being roughly valued at. And I was lucky in that I had one of my advisors who's been advising me for the last 2 years, comes from a finance background, an investment background, and is an angel investor herself, and is putting in some money into our business. She kind of sense checked my valuation. And so
you had an expert on your side.
Yeah, and she's sort of got the term sheet kicked off and was the first signatory on there, and that kind of set the valuation for
great investor. Well done to have up front. Dhruvin.
We did a multiple of our revenue. So we kind of kept it simple and said, right, we'll do 3x of our revenue.
So 3 times your current, your annual revenue?
Yeah. So we did 3 times 2 million revenue. So we got to a valuation of 6 million. But the interesting thing, if I did it again, I would increase the valuation. So, anyone else can try to then, I guess, bring you down a little bit. Because what was interesting is we had offers on the table from someone, and they said, look, we only valued it max at 4.5 million. Second, the people that we did raise from, there wasn't even a question on valuation. It was like, yeah, this all sounds good, great. So actually, you can probably get away with more, but if you value a company a little bit higher, you probably, there's more wiggle room, because there are going to be institutions or people that want to wiggle you down. But once you get your lead investor, then that's the most important thing. And then if you've got that,
they set the level.
Yeah, they set the level, and they're the ones that convince everyone else as well. That's what for us is once they're in, they can support conversations, etc.
And from what I've seen, and Sutin, correct me if I'm wrong, that crowdfunding, you tend to have a higher valuation than you might do if you were working with a few angel investors.
Yeah, that's probably true. Because I think they also do quite a lot of work behind crowdfunding as well, because they're already speaking to investors, including professional and other angels as well. So they've already done kind of a lot of that work in the background before they even launch the crowd campaign live. Yeah. And you can use lots of things. It's an art form, right? People say it's an art rather than a science. So really, you can go out there and look at PitchBook, Crunchbase, or you could look at the other crowdfunding sites, right, and see what other people are getting as valuations and just use those as comparables. Or you could do what Dhruvin did and use multiples of revenues, again, looking at competitors or the industry averages, and then doing it that way. You just need to provide some kind of evidence base to point at.
Yeah, and go on the collective impact program at Virgin StartUp. We'll help you out with all that stuff. And of course, we haven't mentioned incubators and accelerators, which are programs that allow you to get not just support for your business, but also funding. And they often set a certain, you'll see this with a lot of accelerator programs, a certain level of we're going to put £70,000 in for X percentage. but you all arrive at the sort of similar time. But there's loads of places for those. Now, we're going to rattle through a few more. Anna Browning says, how do you find investors to help you do this? Where do you look? Toby adding to that, mentors as well. So where do we find our people that are going to help us grow our business and fund it?
I mean, you have your typical angel networks and things. I only look at angels at the moment. So don't ask me about VCs. But, you have your typical angel networks and things. But actually, sometimes just putting the word out there can help. So I put up a post on LinkedIn when I first started my round, and I said, hey, I'm launching my round. And people who I haven't spoken to in years, but I worked with, 5 years ago at a previous job, are actually investing and significant amounts. So, sometimes just talking about it helps. And you'll find.
But for everyone that's kept their LinkedIn open, despite it being the least social network over the last decade, you'll be very grateful when you get around to fundraising, because it is an effective space for this kind of thing. Yeah. Any others? How do you find your beyond? If Dragon's Den hadn't happened, Dhruvin, like you didn't get that amazing PR, or you didn't generate it yourself, how would you have gone about finding angels?
Yeah, for us angels, there's two platforms that I recommend. One is called AIN, Angel Investment Network, and the other one is called Angel's Den. Both great platforms. I mean, we raised from Angel Investment Network. And then secondly, LinkedIn is fantastic. So I use an automation tool called eLink Pro. There's one that's called Duck Soup, I think, as well. But what I did is
eLink Pro, and is it Duck Soup? The second one?
X Soup, yeah, it has a weird name.
Duck Soup, okay.
And what I did, I went to Sales Navigator and I looked at, I typed in angel investor in the UK, and then I did it by industry, so consumer goods and health. And I think there was like thousands, 3,000. And then I'd send an automation request to connect with them and set up meetings, and that's how I secured some funds. And then secondly, any businesses that are in your industry, follow them on LinkedIn. If they've just raised, especially if it's a small business, they'll, like we did it as well. You announce, wow, we've just raised an amazing round, and you tag all your angel investors. And actually, pushed isn't the right word, but I've seen someone shout about it, and I'm like, oh, this investor looks quite relevant. They've obviously got capital, and they're obviously investing because they've just competed with this business. So actually, just reaching out to anyone that's tagged on those posts, so you can probably find them by hashtag investment or angel round on LinkedIn, and that's a surefire way to get investment as well. We successfully raised via that method as well.
Fantastic. Right, we're gonna wrap up shortly, but I'm gonna try and squeeze in 3 questions, and you can pick whichever one you fancy answering, and then we're gonna go to our break room and say thank you to the 3 of you. So, first question: should I get potential investors to sign an NDA? Explain what an NDA is if you've done that. Second question: should I set up a board when fundraising, a board of directors for my business? And third question: how do I cope with imposter syndrome when I'm fundraising? So different questions. Take your pick, Sutin.
The board question, you don't, it depends on what stage your business in, but you don't really need a board kind of in your early stages. It's always kind of useful to have an advisory board, which is not a formal board. But then those are experts that you can put kind of on your deck to fill in areas of gap in your own experience. Because team on the early stage is incredibly important. So one of the things that people are always going to be evaluating you on as an early stage startup, or actually any stage of your startup, is your team. How strong you are, what your experience, is it relevant, what have you achieved? All those things, and what knowledge you have of this sector and industry. So if you have shortcomings, let's say in the specific sector, you could always fill those in with like advisors, board members. But you're not expected to have a board kind of early stage when you're doing your seed, pre-seed stage. So you can always fill that in with advisors or advisory board.
I think I saw Sutin on someone's pitch deck once. Was essentially, I don't think it's Jeroo. Everyone's their whole LinkedIn sort of like network. They just like copied and pasted their LinkedIn, put it on a pitch deck. It's like, here are my people. It's like, fair enough. They're going to back you. So yes, in other words, like show who you're connected to and who's behind it. What about on NDAs? Have you had experience with that?
Yes, so early stage, this is another thing. You can almost pick out people who are new at being an entrepreneur, wanting NDAs and to protect their idea. If your idea is so easily copied that easily, you have no moat, and investors aren't going to invest in you anyway.
And a moat is what? Explain what a moat
is.
is.
A moat is basically anything that will protect you from other people kind of coming over and doing the same business. We call that a moat. So if you don't have any protection, what protects somebody else from coming in and replicating your business immediately? You have no kind of unique selling point there.
It's you. You are the moat. You are the founder.
You can try that. That works as well.
Yeah, I am the NDA.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
NDA early stage, like most investors are not going to sign that at an early stage because otherwise they'd be spending most of their time doing that. They get so many pitch decks.
Yeah, I have a strong bias to be anti-NDA. But Jeroo and Dhruvin, on the NDA and board questions?
No NDA.
Same.
No.
Same. Okay. And look, successful startups people, no NDA. What about finally imposter syndrome? Like, how have you, any of you experienced it? And if so, how have you dealt with it?
I mean, I could chime in on this one to begin. Yeah. I mean, at every stage you'll have imposter syndrome. Like, it doesn't go away. You know, it's just every different chapter you unlock, there's different, you're in a different room with different achievements and there's a different goalpost. So it's always there. I'd say that one bit of advice I'd give is when you're pitching for investment, there's 3 things that I found that investors always look for. The first is they want to be able to trust you. So if you can show them you're someone that's trustworthy, then that's great. Secondly is confidence. They want to be able to know when you take the money, you're going to be able to execute. So even if you don't feel it internally, be able to externally showcase that you're confident. And then lastly is humility. And what I mean by that is they want to know that they can back someone that's coachable. So if they can see that you're willing to take on advice, then actually they're going to say, well, when we email them, if you've got some advice, they're not just going to say no. So those 3 things really helped me win over investors. So even when you feel like you're an imposter, when you're pitching to investors, you haven't got your shit sorted, then if you can try and follow those things, you can, you know, it will go a long way, I think.
Yeah, and it's a normal feeling to have. I think Barack Obama said he had it when he was president, which is should give us all confidence. Jeroo?
I've had imposter syndrome massively. You know, I feel like an outsider to the fashion sector because I don't come from that background. I felt like an imposter in the entrepreneurial sector. I've never had a business before. In the fundraising space, I never raised before. So, you know, I constantly always, like Dhruvin said, have imposter syndrome at these various stages. I would say get mentors, get advisors, seek the advice you need to help you feel a lot more confident. And you have all sorts of advisors out there, those who will charge you money, those who will offer it to you for free. You kind of need to figure out who works for you, for your stage of business, for your kind of value system. And then try and arm yourself with enough confidence to sort of shut the door in imposter syndrome face.
Which you have done very firmly, Jeroo and Dhruvin and Sutin as well. The answer to all the questions tonight, by the way, are on a small website called Virgin StartUp.org, which will help you business plan, potentially get a loan, find mentors, build a community, get access to events and so on, and meet brilliant people. So this is your place for it all. Sutin, Jeroo and Dhruvin, thank you so much for giving us your time and honesty and wisdom tonight. We are now going to break out into a separate room. So if you go across on the navigation on this hop-in, you'll see there's a, you can go and find where we're going to be now. I'm going to be in there. Lissa's joining us. We will have Josh from Virgin Money in there. Come and share what you're working on. Ask more questions. We'll be there for the next 45 minutes or so. Please follow these brilliant people's businesses, buy their products, recommend them. And thank you guys for your time. And good luck with the next stage.
Thanks, Ben.
See you later.
See ya.